And that is another way to get more eyes and ears on your podcast. It is very frustrating to listen to, and you're most likely not going to keep someone around for that episode. YouTube is the second largest watched platform for consuming podcasts. A shock to us. It's a disturbance. You could increase the amount of content you're producing and increase the engagement levels of your existing audience, better reach and retention for your podcast. What are they going to know, have, and feel by the end of the episode? All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Clarity with Sims Media. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about 4 very simple mistakes that can be made during podcasting, how you can very easily avoid them, have a different approach to them, so that you can then make your podcast more successful, reach more people, increase its retention, and then therefore feel more confident going into your podcast recordings or even with launching a podcast if you haven't done so already. So we'll start this out right away with the first one. Right after that intro, we'll start with this first point being bad intros, and more specifically, long intros. When it comes to podcasting, very commonly, if someone has a guest come onto their podcast, there's a big mistake in that they read off this bio for a really long time. They try and over-explain and give way too much detail about the particular guest and their background and why that's a benefit to the podcast, and really quite often over-explaining it. The intro, you always have to think about it. It doesn't even necessarily just mean to podcasting. Any intro out there, you just have to grab the attention of the audience and help them understand why you should consume that piece of content. So when it comes to the podcasting, if you've got a guest coming on, then yes, do give a little bit of background, but more importantly, it's what someone's going to gain from that podcast episode. That person is there to help amplify that, and you can give that credibility to them and help understand why they are going to help bring that value across. But you need to explain the value of that podcast before you explain why the person that you're bringing on your podcast is going to amplify that. One of my buddies, Joel Weldon, he is one of the most incredible speakers out there. I believe he's actually a Hall of Fame speaker. And within our masterminds, the speakeasies, he has actually come along and taught us how to present even better. One of those things is always starting with the intro. He makes it very clear that there's 3 elements that you can pull into your intro to make a very nice, simple, quick, and effective intro. And I think this can be applied to everywhere because it's communication in general. It doesn't have to be just speaking. It can also be any form of content you're doing, whether it's short form content or long form on YouTube, or it's a podcast. These 3 elements of an intro can be applied to all of them. And that is know, have, and feel. Joel talks about having these 3 pieces to your intros to help people understand what they're going to know during the podcast, what they're going to gain from that, what tools they're now going to have, and then how they're going to feel after they've stuck around for your episode, for your talk. So I'm still working on always getting that good for myself, but I think if you rewind this, if you're watching the replay, I probably did that. I do try to think about it, and I try to explain that you're going to know common mistakes when it comes to podcasting so that you are better equipped in going into your podcasting and will have better reach and retention for your podcast so that you will then feel more confident going into all of your podcast recordings. So you're hitting those 3 elements of an intro, and it also hits the logical side of what you're going to gain, but also the emotional side of how you're going to feel. So you're catering to both of those elements of where people will judge the value of giving their time. So when it comes to your intros, especially if you have a guest on, don't spend too long introing your guest and just reading off their entire bio. You've got time on the podcast to dive into that. It's a conversation that's happening. So let that come through on the conversation, but then also get to the point. What are people going to know, have, and feel by consuming your content, by consuming your podcast episode? So that's point one. Make sure that you don't have too long of an intro. Don't read out an entire bio. And also focus on what the audience is going to know, have, and feel for sticking around to the end. The second mistake is not doing video for your podcasts. This one's a really easy, low-hanging fruit. Most of the time, if you're going to be podcasting with someone, or even if you are doing it solo, a lot of us are doing it through StreamYard, through Zoom, a lot of video-based platforms. So if we're going to strip the audio from it anyway, why not just take the video recording and put it on YouTube? A lot of our clients have asked us even recently about how they can get more reach and performance on their podcast. And they're focusing on just the audio-based platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and such. And then when we go and we look deeper and we see that they don't have a YouTube, we're like, well, why aren't you putting it on YouTube? That is such a massive platform to be gaining attention. And it's also another level of engagement. It's a different type of engagement. You've got another layer of the audio, but also the visual. And not a lot of people understand that YouTube, I believe it was 2021, this stat was coming out, but YouTube had gained second largest platform for consuming podcasts. So if you're not taking the videos from your podcast that you're already recording on video already, and you're just pulling the audio and then you're just throwing away the video, that is such a waste of an opportunity to get more eyes and ears on your podcast. It doesn't really matter what channel someone's on to consume your content. It's just that they're there to actually consume it. So take the audio, put that on those audio-based podcast platforms, but then take the video and put it on YouTube, because YouTube is the second largest watched platform for consuming podcasts. And as we've talked about a bunch, and you will hear it over and over, video just has that extra layer to it of stimulus. You get to see the whole visual, but you also get the audible part to it. So I just think video gives you an excellent ability to engage even deeper. But yes, the audio-based platforms give you the advantage of being able to listen and consume it while you're out and about and just doing anything. So it doesn't get in the way of normal day life. So second point, if you're not doing video, that is low-hanging fruit. Take that video recording and put it on YouTube. You can even put it on Vimeo. Just put it out there, but YouTube is the second largest platform for consuming podcasts. So take your video recordings from the podcast that you're most likely already doing on a video recording platform and put it on YouTube. And that is another way to get more eyes and ears on your podcast. Third, unbalanced audio. If you are, and I think we've probably all had this on just a normal Zoom discussion with someone, there's different mics, different quality of mics. If you are looking at your recording and you notice, or you're not even looking at your recording, you're just putting it up there, and there's unbalanced audio, someone is really loud and then the other person is really quiet, it's very frustrating and difficult to listen to. Because if we're in the car, we don't want to be putting the volume up and down, trying to keep up with it. It's like when you're watching TV or listening to music and all of a sudden one commercial is way louder than the next and you jump and reach for the remote and try and turn it down quickly. It's frustrating. It's also a shock to us. It's a disturbance. So when you're doing your podcast production, very simply, just make sure that you're balancing out those audio levels so that they're at least within a range that no one is super loud and no one's super quiet. There's a bunch of free tools that you can utilize to do this fairly easily. If you've got even basic movie video editing platforms like iMovie and such, you can drag the audio levels up and down. One of the free platforms that I originally started using is called Audacity. And that one, I believe, actually works on Mac and PC. So you can take the audio from your recording of the episode, drop it into Audacity. I think they even have a command, like a little shortcut, press a key, and it applies an effect to the whole audio to kind of balance it up for you. But worst case scenario, if someone's talking and then somebody else is talking, you can just split that audio clip and then adjust the audio levels, right? That's coming from me, not a podcast production expert. That's why we have our team do that stuff. But Audacity is a fantastic tool. It's free. You can throw your audio in there and you can get your audio levels balanced. If you don't balance your audio levels, it is very frustrating to listen to, and you're most likely not going to keep someone around for that episode. Then, as we move on to the last point number 4, the mistake for all podcasters out there, it's not marketing your podcast. A lot of people think that if you have a podcast, that it will somehow be found, that someone will just look for it and know that you have a podcast, assume that it's there. There's a lot of assumption in when we create something, that if we create it, they will come, right? No, with podcasting, you have to put it out there. It's a very competitive area. There's lots of podcasts. So trying to think about the particular search terms, maybe throwing in your name, your business name, stuff like that to make it easier for people to find if that pops into their mind. But don't just rely solely on your audience guessing or thinking that you must have a podcast and going and searching for it. Take your podcast and actively promote it on all channels you have. Promote new episode releases on your newsletter. Take little clips from it and put it out on social media. Put it into your stories. Show everyone in your audience from all channels that you have a podcast. Show the benefit of it. Put it up on your website. You can't assume that people are going to find things. You have all these assets that are floating around on the internet. You have to connect them somehow. Make it really easy for your audience to understand all the ways that they can connect with you. It's this ecosystem that we've talked about over and over. Make sure that you tie in the podcast and make sure that if someone finds your website, they can find your podcast. If they're on your socials, they can figure out that you have a podcast because you're linking to it, you're taking content from it and putting that out. You're actively promoting it. But a lot of people will only play to the organic tactics of the specific podcast platform and hope that reaches their audience, when immediately you could increase the amount of content you're producing and increase the engagement levels of your existing audience by letting them know that you have a podcast. So take clips from your podcast, put that out there, put an email out there to your newsletter on new podcast releases, market it. If you don't market it, how is your audience going to know that it exists? Okay. And that's a really simple way that you can continue to engage further and further with your existing audience, is just by letting them know that you have socials, that you have podcasts, that you have all this stuff that they can engage with, and then make sure it's all working together and self-promoting all of those other assets. So, quick summary of the 4 mistakes when it comes to podcasting that are very easy to avoid. First one, don't have too long of an intro. If you've got a guest on, don't read their bio out forever. Give them the intro, but let people know in specific the point of that episode and why that person is there to benefit that episode. How are people, like Joel Weldon says to us for intros, how are people, what are they going to know, have, and feel by the end of the episode? Secondly, Do videos. Okay. If you're not taking the video recordings of your podcasts, you're missing out on the second largest platform for podcast consumption, which is YouTube. So take those video recordings of your podcast, put them on YouTube, and you've immediately broadened your reach of how many people can possibly see your podcast. Third, balance up your audio levels. Okay, it can be really simple using tools like Audacity. We've got someone's just commented that Camtasia has a great one-step command to balance your audio. Thank you for that tip. That's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a good amount of platforms that do that. So Camtasia is apparently another one that has a simple one-step command to balance your audio. But make sure you balance that audio so that someone's not super loud and someone's super quiet, because that's just frustrating to listen to. Okay, bring those audio levels more balanced. Then lastly, market your podcast. People aren't going to know it exists if you don't tell them. So take little clips from it on those video recordings, even the audio ones. If you are still very hesitant towards doing video, but that's another discussion that we can have, or you could take a look back at some of the other videos we did on, I think it was like debunking the reasons why you're not doing content. You can take the audio clips and just do those little audio file graphic cards. But take clips from your podcast, put it out on social media, do podcast release announcements through your email newsletter. Those are all great ways that you can quickly, easily, for free, get it to your existing audience. We got a question from Andy here. Do you market podcasts through paid advertising channels? Yeah, we do. We test around with utilizing really cool clips from a podcast, and we'll throw that out on social media. We'll just boost it. Boosting is a super easy way of just putting out your content in front of more people. We're also playing around with YouTube, and I'm going to have more details for all of you on that in the future. I am still working out so many little nuances, but YouTube has some incredible opportunities for reaching very specific audiences. And because it's the second largest platform for consuming podcasts, it's a very relevant place to market your podcast. So it all just depends what your advertising flow, what your general marketing funnel looks like, and what money you would like to dedicate to it. I think podcasting is a long-term play, so I don't expect to see immediate ROI in terms of money, but you get a lot of fantastic viewership through YouTube, and we also use social. So yes, we do use paid advertising channels. But if you just want a free way of making sure that your podcast gets some viewership and gets some initial traction, get it out in front of your existing audience through social media posts, email newsletters, SMS, text messaging, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, paid advertising, there are some cool methods for getting out into new audiences, and YouTube so far seems to be one of my favorite for doing that. But yeah, so those are the 4 mistakes that I thought were low-hanging fruit that you could go ahead and make sure that you are avoiding those. And the podcasting will be so much better for you. You will get more reach out of it. You will get more retention, and overall just have a better, more fun podcast. All right. So if there are any more questions, then let me know. You can leave them in the comments. If you do so, then just tag us so that we get that alert, and we will come back and answer those. If you have any other questions as well that aren't related to this particular episode, shoot those our way as well, and we will answer those on the upcoming episodes. All right. Take care.